The other thing I heard in that, which is kind of a thread that we were talking about earlier, is organizations, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're in a big corporation, a professional, is you have to find doers. I'm obsessed with this idea of doers, people who just act without the need to get told the next 7 steps they're supposed to do to get something done. And if you don't have enough of those doers in your organization, it really suffers. I think one of the reasons startups tend to succeed, even when there are huge competitors in the space, is because they are comprised essentially entirely of doers. Because if you don't do something, there's no company,
Right,
right? So you just
right.
kind of have to move. I think organizations that have managed to succeed and evolve and grow, the large ones, have people like you. How do you find that in somebody when you hire them or manage them? Is
That's
that
so
something you
tough.
can do?
That's hard. That's like $1 million question, man. Like I feel
It
like
is.
we,
I know.
yeah,
That's why I keep asking it.
yeah. I don't know how you like really identify that without having access to like a history of like how they've been. You know what I mean? It's like sure in the world of like references and stuff, like you talk to someone and get to that, but like to be able to like really pull that out in an interview is kind of tough because we're also conditioned to interview in a certain way, right? And play up certain things that like, are they a big deal? Well, they are because I'm going to talk about it as a big deal. Like, I think we've been lucky as a company. Like, our company's huge, right? And like overall, like growth the last couple of years has actually been like down revenue wise, but our division specifically has been up quite a bit. Like, it's like company down 3 to 5%. We've been up 20 to 25%. So like definitely moving in a different direction. And I think like a lot of it is like the culture we've built and somehow been able to find doers. You fail a lot. And I think the key is to recognize that quickly and cut bait and just go back into the pool and try to get someone that isn't going to like fall like or that maybe has a better likelihood of succeeding. And look, on this theme of like modeling, I think like a lot of it is like top down too. And I was lucky at Ipsos, my first manager who is absolutely amazing, and another one of these like, oh, she's gonna be running the company, she's gonna be running the company. Well, she's president now. She's one of the North America presidents. So like her rate of promotion, like for a while I was like with her right hand man, and then it was just like boom, 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 and I was like, okay, I'm still sitting here, but that's okay. Um, but the stuff that I learned from her and all the people that she touched, like all those people that were on her team, like at a certain point or another, they are now like the leaders of the organization and they have her mentality and like we like push that down. Again, I think like some stuff you can like identify in interviews, like how are they speaking, right? Like those types of things, like um can they talk about their experiences? Okay, fine. Here, like analyze this data set. You can get like some indication and just like talking to them too. Like a lot of times in interviews, like I don't ask like a lot of like straight up work questions. It's like conversation, like would I get a drink with this person? Like what are you really about? Like that kind of thing, trying to get underneath a little. But you're still like not it's not going to be 100% rate, and that's fine. It never will be, but I think it's that like a lot of companies will hang on to people for too long and it's just not productive. And like it's honestly probably not even for that person's benefit. Like if it's not a good fit, the sooner both of you realize it, the better off you are. So it's not cheap to do that, to hire people and let them go and try again. But like I think there's like a reality to it if you're in this situation where you can't get like a huge background or idea of like what this person's drive is and how their ways of working are and things like that.
I think it's a learning thing to some extent from my perspective, in the sense that I meant being a doer. And that's how you kind of figure it out. At least that's what's worked for me, which is the sense that there are people who get assigned something they've never done before. And their first instinct is to say, I don't know how to do this. Tell me or teach me, right? Which is fine. And I don't want to make it seem like junior people just coming in the industry, you shouldn't ask. You should ask all kinds of stuff. But there's a version of a person who maybe does that, but in parallel or even before they reach out, they start sort of tinkering.
Mm,
They Google stuff, they read an article. And these days they use ChatGPT, whatever it might be, to try to get some edge to see if they can move something forward. And then there's also this piece of it where maybe you're not learning something fundamental to your job, but it's a little bit outside of your scope of duties or whatever it might be, or it requires you to like skip level 2 people over or whatever it might. And people that aren't doers stop. They just stop. They're stop points. People who are doers are it doesn't even dawn on them to like wait. They're like, what do you mean? I know that person. I'll just go ask that person. And
Hmm.
that is something fundamentally about kind of learning and being willing to act. Again, I agree with you. I don't know how you figure this out other than spending time with people. I think it's a very people centric piece of it, but I think it's so important. And I also think you're not the first that has said this idea of like once you identify it's just not going to work, it's time to move on. Lots of famous people have said that. I think the one caveat I've learned in that is it is really expensive to hire and fire
It
and
is.
then hire again. Like it's crazy. Nobody seems to understand it. I mean, nobody, quite frankly. Give people an opportunity to improve. The caveat to that is if they don't have a critical piece of something, 100% agree with you. It's not going to work for them and it's not going to work for you. And so you got to move on and do something different.